Hello, everybody. It's 10:37 p.m. Central Time on the 2nd of January, 2023. It's the future, baby. It's Monday here in the United States. I hope you're doing well. We are doing an actual recording here. I'm going to be uploading this to YouTube once I'm done. But I do have an earthquake update to do for you, as well as to address some claims that are going around right now on social media about a potential large earthquake coming on the West Coast. Well, we'll address that. Look, the channel that it's coming from is coming from over on Twitter called Earthquake Prediction. And it's a channel that issues warnings for 7.0s like all the time. For the West Coast, 6s and 7s and large earthquakes that just don't pan out. And they do not publish their earthquake methodology for review, so there's no way for me to repeat the experiment or do anything of the sort to test it. And you can go look through their past earthquake predictions, which is what the earthquake channel is called. And it's just questionable at best, guys. So I'm just going to say that. Never say never, of course, and I never discount anybody's forecasting methodology if they present it. But you can go check it out over on Twitter. Now, the channels that are reporting it on YouTube are the regular channels I would expect to report that kind of information on frickin' YouTube. Okay, so I said frickin'. Let's go ahead and turn a display capture on and go look at what's really going on seismically. We'll talk about what's going on the West Coast. Look at this line of earthquakes going from California all the way up to Maine. Where have I seen that before? Take a look on the screen. You might see it, you might not. The Craton graphic that I've had out for the last 10 years. Now, I would like to point out something else about these other YouTube channels that are putting out this earthquake prediction, so to speak. They never once, ever carried a warning that I put out. Not once. None of these channels ever once took a warning that I put out for a large earthquake or a small one and told their audiences. Even when I issued the warning for a 7.0 on the West Coast out in California. It hit 2 days later, by the way, when I warned for that 7 in California. So look at the earthquake graphic again. The Craton graphic tells us which way to expect the energy to flow. So even if I'm not here, you should be able to at least remember that we flow from the West Coast over to the East Coast, following that interior edge of the Craton, which is that rusty brownish orangish color there on the screen for you. Okay, so just remember that graphic. There's a 5.4 out off the West Coast. There's 4s, which struck down south the day before. So really, let's get all the small earthquakes out of there and look at the 3.9s and greater. There we go, or 3s and greater. You'll be able to see the 4 that struck right down here on the edge of the Mojave Desert, and a 3.4 to near 4.0 that struck in the Mojave Desert. 2 4s basically, or one 3.5 and another 4.1. Then another 4 struck, now downgraded to 3.9 in the Bay Area, as well as a 3 down in Texas on the edge of the Craton down in Texas. And then, of course, you see the 5.3 to 5.4 quake up in Northern California, back where our 6.4 earthquake struck about a week and a half ago. Now, when that big earthquake struck, the original big earthquake, that big earthquake caused some damage, but the new 5.3 to 5.4 that you see on the screen here now, video is out over on YouTube, which I shared on my community page, showing the amount of shaking and shocking that went on from that. And it was actually a pretty big shock wave. Just a sudden, really hard jolt that caused damage more than people are saying the 6 caused. So pretty interesting on that, right? Now take a look at the rest of the quakes going over across the rest of the Craton. When I see a flow of earthquakes going across the Craton, that lets me know energy is flowing across the Craton. And that's good to see. If it wasn't flowing across the Craton, then I would start to worry about a buildup out on the West Coast. Now, I look at the magnitudes that we're currently seeing, and we know which way the flow goes. Let's go take a look at the earthquakes going down along the coast. So you see there's a line going from up here where our big earthquake is in Northern California, And then we have stacks of earthquakes that are lined up following the San Andreas Fault, going down here to a place called Parkfield, where we kind of branch out to the east and to the west-southwest. Same time that's going on, there's a line of quakes coming down from Northern California at Lake Tahoe, spreading out across the eastern part of the valley, and then branching out down to Southern California, where we have more stacks of earthquakes. So this flow that's going on here is what we expect. We want to see the flow go down to the east by southeast and reach out over to the edge of the craton, going over to Texas and all the way up the east coast, like we're seeing now. So take a look at, one more time, the earthquakes trailing out from Texas go over to Oklahoma, the New Madrid seismic zone, and up into Ohio and Maine, or southeast Quebec. And that flow will increase, the magnitudes will increase as the flow carries down through California. Now, look at the earthquakes, look where the rings overlap. We've got a bunch of overlap points here on California, and we look to the center of it all for a new break to take place. Now, the break should be the combined total of what's on all sides. So what's on all sides? We've got a 5.3 on one side and a 4.1 on the other. If you take the 5.3 plus the 4.1, you equal 5.341. Add in the other 3.9, we take it up just another hair of a point. In other words, you could just round this up to a 5.4's worth of energy if we combine it all together. And then we look to the middle, and on the middle, where does it overlap? It overlaps in eastern California, over along the border. So I would look for a new 5 to 5.4 to strike over along the eastern California border within the next few days. Now, what's over at the California eastern border? Let's go over to Google Earth and take a look and just show all my new viewers, my longtime viewers, already know what resides at the border with California and Nevada, which is right here. You see we have a few place marks. One's for Long Valley Caldera, the super volcano, quote unquote, with 1,000 cubic kilometers of melt down below, identifying it as a supervolcano. It's just a big caldera. And right there at the border is where we'll watch for a new 5 to take place. Could go up as high as, again, like I said, up to near 5.4. About the same size as what's going on currently on the coast of California. I would then look for 4s to go across the plate over the next few days. So where we currently have 3s, we'll have 4s going up to 4.4, 4.5, mid-range 4, enough to get people's attention. So really that means Texas is about to get hit in central Texas, where the rings overlap here next to Midland, Lubbock. Then over to the east, we have to watch for wherever we see 2s, should see new 3s. So in this case, that means Oklahoma 3s, Arkansas 3s, going up to the east by northeast. We'll look where in between where these two current earthquakes are in Ohio and Quebec, or at Maine. That puts us right along the border of New York. So keep an eye out at the New York border. 3 sets of 3s, enough to get people's attention. If it goes any higher, I apologize. I'm trying to get it within a magnitude. So it could go as high as 4. If we got a bunch of 4s going across the plate, that would mean the plate's really in motion. And if we see that, of course, I'll do another update. But I'm looking for 3s to go across the plate and a new 5 out at the California-Nevada border. Now let's get into Southern California really quick. Since there's a line of earthquakes pointing down to Southern California, we can also expect far Southern California to start to show some activity right along the border. And this is pretty obvious. Once we go down the California famous fault of the San Andreas, we get to Parkfield. Like I said, we branch out over into the valley. Over to the east, I'll mark it in blue. Over to the west, we'll mark it in blue, and you see it's a line going across. Let me show you where that is on Google Earth and show you why we're branching out there. So here is California. Here is the famous San Andreas Fault. And we'll zoom in on it, where we branch out. Here's a place called Parkfield, the earthquake capital of the world, as they call themselves. But we branch out over to the east. What's over there? Look, a bunch of drill points, perforation points that are just pretty shallow in the plate, a few kilometers down at the most. And zooming in on it, you can see, again, we have our famous jacks or pumps everybody's familiar with, and they're connected via pipeline one to the other. We branch out over to there, over to the east. Now, over to the west, go out to the coast, it's nothing but faults. So one direction we go to man-made drill points, perforations. The other we go over to faults Mother Nature made right along the coast, going down south towards San Luis Obispo. But once we get down here, down at Lompoc, California, pull the coordinates here and see how it says Lompoc. Hopefully you can see all this on the screen. I'm using a new copy of OBS and a few other things. Zooming in, where are we going? Here's Lompoc, but what's that? What are those? 2 sets of offshore rigs. See that there? One there, for oil, of course, and one here. Now, those aren't the only. Those are out in the ocean. All here around Vandenberg Air Force Base. We have a bunch of pumping operations. I don't know if they're part of the base themselves, but we'll just zoom in and show you. Each one of these is an oil well. And we might be able to get the shadows on the jacks of the pumps there. There we go. And then we go down here and it really picks up in the number of pumping operations. The point of showing you these on land is to show you we're sandwiched in between 2 pumping operations. One out in the ocean, one on land, which comes right down here to the south side of the base, where they do space launches, actually, from Vandenberg. Okay, that's where the earthquake is, out along the coast. Up to the north, just to the north, we could just follow it along the coast. I could pull the coordinates, actually. Let's do that. It'll make it a little easier. Orcutt, California. Orcutt. Oh, man, I can't pronounce these places out in California. I can't pronounce anything properly. Go figure, right? Let me make sure you can hear me. Okay. There we are. What's this? Well, it looks like we've got ourselves a airport, but it's right next to what I was just showing you, literally on the north side of the oil pumping operations, which are right here. So we're looking at about a mile away, and that's more than a mile. Let's measure. First of all, let's find our northernmost pumping operation. Is this a radar site? No, tanks. Okay. But tanks don't equal jacks or drill points, so I want to try to find the nearest drill point. Looks like a radar site there. It's kind of hard to differentiate the two unless you zoom in on every single one. Okay, here are some right here. We'll measure from this one. Okay, and the reason I measure is just to see, of course, how far we are. I look 6 to 10 miles, and the reason we look 6 to 10 miles is because they can drill out by several miles at an angle. All right, well, there it is. Now, there may be other nearby pumping operations that yeah. Dude, how did I miss this? Take a look. Look at these. Look how many there are. Oh, my God. It's literally like 1,000 of them. Oh, wow, we have a 3D model of them. Look at that. Google's done the 3D on it. Looks like a dinosaur. Okay, wow. Look at the size of this pumping operation here. All of these little pads in the ground are different oil wells. I didn't have this marked, so it's kind of unknown to me that this was right here. Look at them. Look at how many there are. Gee, I wonder why we have an earthquake right next to it. I get sarcastic, sorry. Okay, so let's just recap. Our earthquakes are coming down the San Andreas. We all know about it, the San Andreas. Once we get down to Parkfield, we jump over into the valley, we jump over to the faults, go back down to the drill points. Here and here. Now, what's over in the valley this way? More drill points. Do I need to show you all the drill points? Let's recap even more. Back to the north. So, 5.4 earthquake up to the north. A line of earthquakes going down to the south, reaching to this big stack that you see here I haven't even talked about. It's at a place called Geysers of California. Anderson, or I think it's Geysers. Let's see. Yeah, the Geysers. And on the side of this volcano, humans have drilled in hundreds of times to get steam. That's where the big stack is there. Once we go through the Bay Area, it picks back up on the San Andreas, go down to our biggest earthquake of the day along the coast, or at least interior to California, which is a 3.9. And that's right next to Parkfield, where we jump out, across, over to our drill points, and go back down to our drill points. So the one lone quake in here that I did not show you yet, well, actually, there's 3 lone quakes in the valley that I did not show you yet. And let's just go look them up. 1.9, similar California, right along the famous San Andreas, but there's something there. I said drill points, I'll show them to you. So all this talk about big earthquakes coming from a channel that is just some unknown frickin' earthquake prediction channel on Twitter, I'm offended, quite frankly. I'm kind of butthurt by it, It's been 12 years, guys, I mean, credit where credit's due, I mean, you never once, never mind. Anyway, there's our earthquake. Now, I told you, drill points. All of this place right here is called Missouri Triangle. And I'm from Missouri, but this is out in California. Look how many there are here. This is not a well storage yard. It's not a storage yard for jacks or pumps. It just goes on and on and on. We may even have a street level that we can see here. Yeah, we do. Looks like they pulled off the road right here. Google car drove down a dirt road in California's wastelands. Oh, when was the imagery date? 2007. Done with a camera from 2001. Look at the grainy image. Okay. All right, we're not going to get a good view on that, but nonetheless, there's our drill points again. Here's the San Andreas. In case you're new, here's the San Andreas. All of our drill points go right down along it, right up to it. And I mean right up to it. And I mean tens of thousands of them, if not more. Guess which way the earthquakes go? They jump off the San Andreas and follow down, following the drill points, going and seeking out the weakest point, path of least resistance on this flow of seismic energy that's going across the plate. So a line of quakes leads us down to Southern California. Now, I mentioned these 2 earthquakes over here in the Eastern Valley. Let's go look those up, make sure they're quakes first, because sometimes we get quarry blast listed out here. Mariposa, California. Now, there's something here I found on my own, and the reason and way I found it is pretty intriguing. First of all, professionals I haven't seen talk about this, so this would be something I found just by looking up quakes that started to strike around this thing, as well as fires that started to break out around this thing. Now, what thing am I talking about? I'm talking about what's at the center of the screen, which is this circular-like shape. It's really a dome that rises up to the center and then goes back down slightly on the eastern side and western side. And you can kind of see it here. It's circular-shaped, and I could turn it at an angle if you want to, but anyway, this thing gets hit with earthquakes around the outside edge of it, also fires around the outside edge of it. That's what drew my eye to it. Now, I found another one further down to the south right here that's partially collapsed. The center of it's gone down. It looks like a volcano almost, but it's not. It has never erupted. Now, what these are, I think, at least as best as I can tell, are 2 ancient laccoliths. The one up to the north is much bigger. Now, a laccolith is a bulge that can happen in a plate where magma intrudes but never erupts. Now, there's something right next to this. Our supervolcano. On the other side, Long Valley Caldera, on the other side of the mountain range. So on this side, the valley side, we have a bulging laccolith. On the other side, we have Long Valley Caldera. I think they're connected. I can't prove it, but the earthquakes and the fires that are breaking around the outside edge of it kind of tell us there's probably some heat and magma coming up from it. But it's a big discovery because, as far as I can tell, never found by anybody. It's a visual feature that you would have to see by just looking at the earthquakes that are striking around it, trying to figure out why there's earthquakes and fires breaking out around it. Anyway, earthquakes are breaking out around it now again, as California is being saturated with this seismic wave that I'm talking about that's coming in and going down through the San Andreas. It's also coming in and going down through Lake Tahoe and spreading out across over into Nevada. all these locations at the California-Nevada border are volcanic locations. It doesn't mean they're going to erupt. It's just they're volcanoes, ancient volcanoes, going right back up to Lake Tahoe. And if you need me to show those to you, I can quickly show them to you. This update's getting kind of long. I was just trying to address the claims of a potential 7.0 earthquake where the methodology is not presented, but warnings are. And the unnamed nature of the person or people presenting the warnings. So, again, there being earthquake prediction channel on Twitter with no verifiable name or person attached to it, no one to hold accountable, and then the channels on YouTube that are repeating it are channels that, well, quite frankly, went off on me in the past. It's kind of weird. So, let's zoom in and show you. Here, between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. Why am I taking the time to show that to you? Look at our lone earthquake up here to the north. See that? Now, we go down from up at Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. This is a giant caldera. Let me turn off all of our borders and labels, places, 3D buildings, everything. Now, the way I found this, again, no professional that I know of has ever discovered this or talked about it, but this giant oval shape in between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake. Now, on the south side of this giant oval shape is a geothermal field called Steamboat Springs, which I'll show you in a second. On the north side, about the same distance, we have the needles at Pyramid Lake up here. Now, these are not marked, but they're tufa deposits in a large geothermal field there. You guys can go look it up. Now, let's turn our volcano place marks back on from the Smithsonian here, and you'll see here's Steamboat Springs down on the south side of this giant oval shape. Now, giant oval shape lined with volcanoes, lined or at least equidistantly spaced geothermal fields on either side, volcanoes around the outside edge of it, and earthquakes around the outside edge of it. It's a giant ancient caldera. Now, to seal the deal, these are two folds or basins that have formed on either side of this ancient feature. One is the super deep Lake Tahoe, which I don't know how far it goes down, but I think it's like 1,000 feet deep. I want to say, I really don't know. I probably find out 800 feet deep, 1,000 feet deep. And then over here, we've got one that's approximately the same. So, two folds or basins filled with water on either side, two geothermal features on either side, lined with volcanoes, hit with earthquakes around the outside edge, and in this case, earthquake right in the middle. As we go down to the south, like I said, nothing but volcanic features across the Nevada-California border, where each one of our earthquakes is. Down to the east-southeast, first earthquake right here. And we're right next to Mud Springs Volcanic Butte. Pretty cool looking feature, actually. It's a 200-foot high lava flow that comes up off the desert floor there. It can be traced back to its butte. Spatter cone there and a sill. Aurora Crater and Aurora Bodie Crater is marked from the Smithsonian over to the west. Anyway, earthquake right next to it, which brings us into a military arsenal, by the way. Don't worry, it's not a blast there, even though the earthquake's right next to it. The lake, see the lake right there? There's the lake. Anyway, earthquake down below it. It's related to the ancient volcanoes next to it. As we go down to the east by southeast from there, there's a 1.5 and then a cluster of earthquakes. Let's show you both spots. East by southeast, in the middle of here. And then another cluster of earthquakes down at Monte Cristo Hills Volcanic Buttes. So let's get the earthquake from in the middle. This is another discovery that I made due to earthquake striking here. You know, it sounds like I'm bragging or something, but I gotta tell you, I mean, who's gonna tell you? If they're discoveries I made, who's gonna tell you, right? People are like, dude, we know. I'm like, how could you know? Nobody's ever found it. Look at this. This thing here, a bunch of earthquakes started striking this. I zoomed in on it. I said, hey, hold on, that looks circular. And then I said, hey, hold on a second. That's right next to Mono Lake, and Long Valley Caldera. And it's about the same size as Long Valley Caldera. So zooming in on the features, turn on our borders and labels from places, then you're going to find out this is, look at this, Black Dike Mountain. Now, a dike volcano is, well, it's a type of volcano, but you can see where the old flows happened here. These aren't trees. Those are rocks. black basalt flowed out and down one side. On the other side, you can see where it's happened with different types of lava coming out, or magma coming to the surface, lava, red as opposed to black. So you've got reds, blacks, and purples. And you can see where it happened more ancient, and each one is about the same size. You see that? Okay, now it's a ring of them. It's a basin. And a bunch of earthquakes strike this thing all the way around the outside edge. Now, what this appears to me is pretty much the same thing as the supervolcano over to the west-southwest over in California, but instead of erupting, it breaks every once in a while and flows out with huge lava flows. But there's got to be a feeder for it down below, and that's where the earthquakes are coming from. Anyway, a bunch of earthquakes going from up here. Oh, hey, look. A new earthquake just got reported up here in Northern California as I'm talking about the location up in Northern California. We'll look that up in a second. Anyway, a line of quakes going down from one volcano to the other, to the other, to the other. One volcanic feature, to the other, to the other, to the other, where Mother Nature has previously broke apart. That's why this wave is seeking out these spots. The Lacolith down in the valley also getting hit. Now let's go up to the north. Go look up this new earthquake that just got reported. When did it strike? 4:58 UTC, literally in the last few minutes. Europeans have it marked as Northern California. I don't even know how they would say that over in Europe, but let's go pull it from the good old USGS and put these coordinates in. Go take a look and see. Picture speaks 1,000 words. I have no idea what's there. It's a new quake. I know what's right next to here, but... okay. Wow, interesting. We're at Lake Almanor, which is right on the foot of Mount Lassen on the other side of. But really, we're right next to the thing I was just showing you, the giant oval shape that's lined with earthquakes, lined with volcanoes and hit with earthquakes. We're right next to it. Canyon Dam is right there. Do we have power electrical generation going on here? The only way to know is to look. You would think they would. I don't know. That's pretty low amount of power lines coming off there. There's a few, but those might just be to control something. It is. There is. Looks like there is. It doesn't look like there's a huge electrical generation there, but there is. Okay, it matters on the electrical generation. Let's follow the power lines, see where they go. If we're anywhere close. Going down to the south and over to the east. It's pretty far. Okay. I have to check for the power lines. We see earthquakes that follow power lines in many cases or strike next to power generation stations. Wow, it's turning into a full West Coast and United States update. All to talk about something that's just what I would consider to be a erroneous warning at a time where there is heightened seismic unrest on the West Coast. Now, let me take everybody back. Everybody put on the brakes. How did this all happen? Why is there warning? Why are there warnings going from unknown channels for 7.0 quakes? Why did a 6.4 earthquake strike on the West Coast up in Humboldt? Why did another 5.4 strike and a bunch of 4s strike down through the Mojave Desert? Why are there a line of earthquakes going across the United States following the edge of the craton over to the east? Let's get that craton graphic on there again. Why is the United States being displaced? Well, let's go back a couple weeks now. We have to go back 2 weeks to when our 6.4 earthquake and displacement came in from the north. We had a 6.4 strike up in Alaska on the Aleutian Island chain. We had Mauna Loa go across the Central Pacific. A bunch of 6.0 level activity over in the West Pacific. That led to the West Coast moving, also on a 6.4 level basis. The same size that struck up in Alaska, struck down in Humboldt. Why? Let's go back to something I showed you at the start of this update, which is the USGS plate boundary map. Here is the red-lined USGS plate boundary map. We started with a 6.4 earthquake up here a couple weeks back. Then we went down to the south tip of the Juan de Fuca. Look where it comes in. Well, I'll be right next to where the 6.4 struck. Then a line of earthquakes went down through California, down to the Mojave, 4.0 range. Now a new break is taking place up in Northern California, back where the previous break took place, and it's going to continue to break as new pushes come in from the northwest. And what are we dealing with now? All mid-range 5s across the board. And let me show those to you. These all struck in the last day. Look at it in the West Pacific. Notice anything about the pattern or shape of earthquakes here? I'm showing you everything. Well, here, let me make sure. Here. Everything 4.9 and greater. Notice anything? It makes an arrow or a Y shape going from north of Japan all the way back down to a pinnacle tip out into Indonesia and then back all the way across to a deep earthquake that's raised high off the globe but still a 5 down below Tonga north of New Zealand. See that? Again, it's like an arrow shape or a letter C shape. Now look what that mimics. That mimics across the West Pacific as a whole, where the West Pacific meets up, going all the way over into Asia. The USGS map really doesn't show it as well, because we have to look at 2 days worth of earthquakes, not one. If we look at 1 day's worth of earthquakes like the USGS map shows, versus 2 days worth of earthquakes like the USGS map doesn't show, and what you'd see is that it's a pinnacle tip over in the West Pacific. The size of the earthquakes matters. What this really means, the whole Pacific has shifted on a mid-range 5 level in the last 2 to 3 days. See? And what does that mean? It means we're about to take the next step up. How big? 1 magnitude. So if we go up 1 magnitude from where we are now, that goes up to 6.4. We're going to go back up to where we were last week. And then the areas that should be hit are the middle points between our current sets of earthquakes. So we can just nail it out. We have a deep 5.3 here, big open silent zone, then a new set of quakes here. What's the halfway point between here and here? It brings us right in here. New Caledonia, one of the more famous earthquake zones on the planet. Next overlap point's pretty easy to spot. It's right here, where the rings are overlapping. Where is that? Eastern Papua New Guinea, another famous earthquake location. So we're going to see sets of 6s break out between our sets of 5s. Think of these like 2-arm scales, balancing in the middle. The middle is where the new break is going to take place. You ever wonder why none of these people on YouTube are repeating my earthquake forecasting methodology and talking about it when the earthquakes hit? Because they'd have to get credit. That's why. They don't want to do that. So here's a new overlap point on the other side of Papua New Guinea over at Western Papua New Guinea. Eastern Papua New Guinea is going to get hit. Western Papua New Guinea is going to get hit. Both are going to be hit by the combined total of what's on both sides. And I already warned you for what it is. It's going to be up to the 6.0 level, up to 6.4. As we go to the north, we're going to take a step down in magnitude. So we're going to spread out to the west and go to the north. That's why we're going to take a step down. It's like a Y junction here. Let's go back to the USGS map. Coming in from Papua New Guinea, going up to Japan, and over to the west, over into Indonesia. We're going to split in half the energy that's coming up from down below. So when we split it in half, we take the 6.4 worth of energy, split it in half. What does that mean? It means there's going to be 2 new sets of 5.9s, or near 6s. Step down. So a new 5.9 to 6 here right at North Indonesia, and a new 5.9 to 6 striking over here at Central Java, Indonesia. Halfway point between the 5.1 here and this 5.0 here. Halfway point brings us into Java, Indonesia, if we go around the bend of the plate, right? Here, let me take you over to the USGS map and show you. What's the halfway point between this earthquake here and back over to Papua New Guinea? We go around the bend of the plate. Brings us right in here into Java, Indonesia, and that's where the new 5.9 is going to break. As we go to the north, we have 2 spots to watch. This is on the diamond-shaped plate that connects up to Japan, we have one side Taiwan, the other side Guam. Both are going to be hit. They're the halfway points. What's the halfway point between the 5.2 to the south and the 5.2 to the north? You don't just draw a straight line between them, by the way. You go around the bends of the plate. So 5.2 to the south, 5.2 to the north, halfway point between the two. It's like a diamond. So Taiwan, Guam. What size? Same size that's going to strike down towards Indonesia, up to 5.9. So I'll just warn them for up to a 6, but most likely 5.9 USGS, right? 5.9 Indonesia, upper 5 coming over towards Guam. If you're in Guam, tiny island right there, U.S. military bases are there. As we go to the north, our overlap point is one of the more famous earthquake zones on the planet. That brings us up to North Japan, South Hokkaido. This is just north of where the 9.0 earthquake struck back in March of 2011. The size magnitude should also be 5.9. Okay? Let's go over and talk about Europe. Let's talk about the rest of the planet. Let's look at the smaller earthquakes to do that. One more thing. Alaska, Hawaii. Ah, yes. Alaska. Now, this is going to be in the 5 range going across Alaska as far as I can tell. If it gets any bigger, I'll jump back on and do another update. Between the 4.5 and the 4.2, halfway point overlap. New 5 should break out up to 5.2. Also a new 5.2 coming into Anchorage at the tail end of this, like bookends. It's going to come over and go down into the United States. Let me show you how. Here. So, on the Aleutian Island chain, let me make sure you can see this. Aleutian Island chain, we come up and then we make a hard bend following the Pacific Plate down into the United States. See that one more time. It's like a U shape. Anyway, earthquake going to be coming up into Anchorage. How did I come to the determination of Anchorage? Take a look at all the smaller earthquakes. It's like a ramp jumping right up into, going up into Denali. The halfway point between the pinnacle tip of the quakes up here to the north and all the way back where they come in down to the south, where there's a huge cluster coming in next to Kodiak. Halfway point between the two, Anchorage. Okay, now let's talk about over across down into Hawaii. So Mauna Loa kind of puttered out, didn't it? And then Kilauea had new seismic start to take place. Started to swarm out. Take a look. Let's get all the... Actually, hold on. Let me turn the rings off. Jeez. Or no, wait. You turn off the magnitudes? We got a lot going on. Okay. The number of earthquakes going on here is actually starting to increase. I call this a frequency increase. So think of a drummer beating the drum, and then they pick it up to a fast roll of the drum, really fast snare drum roll. That's kind of where we're going right now. It's the roll of the drum is picked up, but the beat of the drum, or I should say the intensity of the hitting of the drum, has not. So we're not hearing the bass drum kick in yet. The highest we're going is like into the 3 range. I think that's about to take the next step up. I really think we're going to go up to the upper 4 range. We may see new volcanic activity back at Kilauea, going back to Pu'u'o'o, of all places. So watch out at Pu'u'o'o, which is east of Kilauea. The reason I'm looking at Pu'u'o'o, we have stuff going along the coast and a swarm going on. So swarm of earthquakes and stuff going along the coast to the east-southeast just tells me keep an eye out on Pu'u'o'o. Now, longtime viewers, when you look at the Earth and you see this, and you see what it looks like a pincushion with a bunch of earthquakes raised high off the globe, going from all the way up here north of Japan, back down here to just north of New Zealand, up at Tonga, all the earthquakes which are raised high off the globe are deep earthquakes happening down below the plate. And my longtime viewers know what that means. When we see a bunch like this, it means there's coming large earthquake activity between our current sets of deep earthquakes. So on top of all the warnings that I just issued for 5s and 6.4s, in the next 7 to 10 days or less, we're going to be taking a whole notch up, and I mean one big earthquake should be striking over here in the West Pacific, centered between our current sets of deep earthquakes. Now, when you see this many, I think of this like a relay runner effect, where one deep earthquake passes off the energy around, going around and around as we have a very low frequency wave of some kind coming up from down below the plates. The very low, or actually ultra low frequency. The spacing on these earthquakes, the spacing on the deep earthquakes that are raised high off the globe, thousands of miles apart between each deep quake. Now, each deep quake that is happening, take a look. Letter D here, 2 letter Ds here in Indonesia, 1 letter D here in Japan, 1 up here at Okhotsk, Sea of Okhotsk, north of Japan, 1 over here in the Middle East, and 1 down here in South America. That's where all of our letter Ds are. Now I'm going to turn the quakes back on. And look where they're raised high off the globe. So, letter D here, populated with multiple new deep earthquakes. Letter D here, hit directly next with a new deep 4.5. Letter D here in Japan on both sides of it, down south and up north, and then further to the north right next to our letter D. As we go over to the west, another earthquake raised slightly higher off the globe, about 200 kilometers deep, on our letter D there at Mideast, and across the planet all the way down below South America, raised slightly high off the globe. Okay, multiple new deep earthquakes, and then there's others as well, like in Central America below Mexico. But the main bulk of them, and the deepest of the bunch, going from the Sea of Okhotsk back down to Tonga, back to the USGS map. From the Sea of Okhotsk back down to Tonga. Where does that take us? Look, the whole western side, down below the West Pacific, something's displacing down below now. That's all the deep earthquakes over the last day and a half. So now we watch between our sets of deep earthquakes for big releases to happen. Up shallow, up above. Think of these deep earthquakes that are raised high off the globe like people lifting on the underside of something. And the underside of what they're lifting on has a big break right across the center of it that goes all the way down from the top all the way through. And you're lifting on one side, and you're lifting on the other. What's going to happen between them? If there's already a break between them, well, the combined force of the lifting power that you're putting on is going to seek out that middle point between them, sorted middle point, the sorted middle point, and break at the weakest spot. Now, when you get multiple sets like this, you have to back it out almost a whole planet away to see the center point. Which brings us into Indonesia, North Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, going up to Philippines. So for one single large earthquake to strike, that is where I would watch. Now, to seal the deal, again, to show you what I was just talking about, that there's already a V shape pointing to it as kind of the center of the focus of where the shift is taking place. The shift from down below to up above. And it's spreading out and away. So what's shifting? The Indo-Australian plate. India, Australia, down below it. And then it spreads out and away. And that's why the United States is usually the last to get the shifting, because it takes a full week almost for the flow to go from over here, up, around, and back across. Only when there's a huge push do we see a flow go directly across over to Central and South America. So, this update pretty much covers the West Pacific on what to watch for, as well as the United States. Going across out over into Asia, I want to show you something I've been paying attention to, but it's a site that you probably don't normally check, which is Volcano Discovery. Over on Volcano Discovery, watching the earthquakes, I've been not using Earthquake 3D as much while I've been in serious downtime and having some serious connection problems. That's why I'm not streaming now, by the way. Instead, I'm recording. Looking at the earthquakes on Volcano Discovery, it's pretty significant, so let's hit refresh. Well, now that's odd. I've been using this all week to look at the earthquakes. Okay, let's just go down to the... Well, okay, we'll just use this. Looking over here in China, take a look. So there's a cluster of earthquakes there, obviously, in China. Now, comparing this to this. So let's show you. Obviously, we're looking at the same earthquakes, but there's more listed over here on Volcano Discovery. They're listing the European earthquakes for longer than 50 earthquakes. And that matters because the USGS is omitting most of the earthquakes in China. And I'm not dogging on the USGS at all. I'm just saying, if you go check the USGS site or feeds and you want to get a good idea of what's going on over here, here's the last day what the USGS is showing us. Last day, USGS. Last day, using the combined feed of the Europeans and the USGS. Let's show you what hit. 3.9, a 4.1, a 3.9, a 3.8, a 4.0, a 4.4, a 4.6. Okay, now this is just in the last, the last 24 hours. And I don't know if we can pull up the last 48 hours. Let's see if we can. There we go. Now, let me show you the last 48 hours on my earthquake. Look at this. So the last 48 hours now. This is a big deal. We're looking, let me get 4.0 and greater on here so we don't have to see all the 3s. Look at how many 4s are in here. I'm going to read them to you. 4.3. This is from the European feed. 4.0. 4.2. 4.1. 4.4. 4.1. In the last 2 days now. 4.0. 4.7. 4.7. 4.2. 4.3. 4.3. 4.0. 4.7. That's in the last 2 days, according to the European feed, which is being stored on Volcano Discovery. Now I'm going to take you over and show you my feed. Here's my feed. Now it's showing you some, but not all of them. Not all those. Not even close. Here's China. I'm not talking about down here in India. I'm talking about up here. All up here. It shows one quake over the last day. Here's 2 days. 3 days. One quake. This, right here. This versus this. So what's happening here is the Europeans are reporting the 4s. But the feed, the live feed for the Europeans that everybody's apps are powered by, is 50 earthquakes long. And so when 50 earthquakes hit, it starts dropping the oldest earthquake off the live feed and it stores it on their site. So the general public doesn't get to see this. What's going on in Western China. Look at it. So now, USGS site. Maybe I need to turn it on for the full week or something. Let's go do that. Hold on. Last 7 days, 4.5 plus, right? Right, guys? 4.5 plus. That's what it says. Let's go the last 7 days, 2.5 plus. Well, look at that. Out there in the middle of Russia, they got a 4.4. Look over here in Iran, they got a 4.5. Turns out the USGS reports under 4.5. Here, they got a 4.1 out in the Kuril Islands. So don't tell me the USGS doesn't report under 4.5. Here's 4.5 out there in Japan. There's a 4.3 off the coast of Japan. So the USGS can report smaller earthquakes. I'm clicking on a few right now. Here, let me get another one on the screen that's like down in Indonesia or something. Again, they cover under 4.5 internationally. There's a 4.4 in Papua New Guinea. And again, they cover down to 4.1 in many places internationally. Now, I'm clicking on a lot of 4.9s, aren't I? Jeez, that's a lot of 4.9s. Anyway, 4.3 up in the Sea of Okhotsk. Why does it matter? Because look what they're showing out here in China. 2 quakes, maybe 3 at the most. Back to what really hit. Something's going on over in Western China. What's over in Western China? Do you see it? Do you see the red line of the plate boundary that goes up into Western China right here, just to the north? Something's going on across this area. Now, finally, let's zoom in on it really close. Notice anything about the earthquakes? They're going right up to the China border, I know. But they're spreading out and going right down from the China border down to the red line of the plate boundary, which is on this map here. So we're going down along the China border, going down to the plate boundary. I don't know what they're doing there. I think those are earthquakes. But I had to take all this time to get even them on the feed because you can't see them if you just check the USGS site And if you've got the European feed, you'd have to literally be marketing themselves yourself on some kind of like a pincushion map on your house or something. So something's getting ready to happen over here in Western China, going over to Afghanistan, North India, Kashmir. Something along the China border is building. What is building along the China border? Well, I've been talking about it now for a few minutes. The Indo-Australian Plate and something going on down below it from Tonga all the way up to Sea of Okhotsk north of Japan and all the way over to right at the spot that I'm talking about with the deep earthquakes. So now, take a look at it. Look at our line of quakes. Now that you know what to look for, it looks like a jumbled mess at first, but it's like a flowing river that goes up to the north, branches off, goes up to Alaska, and it's like a flowing river of quakes that goes up and goes up into China, where it's clearly getting blocked. We have something building there. We have a deep earthquake down below there. What size, magnitude would I look for? In this case, with the big break that's going on there, I don't know if they're doing it. What if they're detonating things along the border? It's pretty fishy to have it go right along the border. I'm not going to say it can't happen. That's a double negative, but I think I used it proper. I'm not going to say it's impossible that they're detonating things along the border to try and induce some kind of seismic activity to go down to the plate boundary or something. But Mother Nature can flow right along it. You can see the mountain ranges take the shape. They're marked in brown. And the mountain ranges are mimicked by the faults. That's why they're folded that way. It's on the north side of the Taklamakan Desert, going down to the west side of the Taklamakan Desert, and on the south side of the desert. So it's on all sides. It's focused in the middle. We got a deep earthquake down below it. All the rings overlap on it. The magnitude, so hard for me to determine on this. I'll put it even with what we're talking about over in Indonesia, which I haven't stated a magnitude on yet either, which is going to be 6.9. I'm saying 6.9 because I don't want to say 7, because every time I say a 7, it comes in at 6.9. I'm not saying they're doing that on purpose. I'm just saying we're going to watch for a 6.9. Trying to get it within a magnitude, but it's going to be a big quake. So, big quake here, 6.9. That's over at the Indonesia border with Philippines. And a new 6.9 or near 7.0 quake, which is pretty rare for the Mideast, and it causes devastating damage when we get big earthquake activity like that over here. And the time frame on this would be 7 to 10 days. So we're looking at a 10-day watch going from today till the 12th. So from now till the 12th here. And over in Indonesia going into Philippines. I do 7 to 10 day watches on the big deep earthquake events that take place like this. This is an actual deep earthquake event. When you have this many, if it was just 1 or 2 deep quakes, we'd watch next to the deep quakes and be done with it. But with stuff like this, 10,000 miles displaced down below the plate, all in a day, how much energy do you think it would take to displace the whole West Pacific going below the Indo-Australian plate all the way over to the Mideast in a day? A lot. That's the science answer on that is a shit ton. Now, over to the west, we go over into Turkey. I warned Turkey last week, 2 weeks ago I issued the warning for Turkey. It took a full week, and then Istanbul got hit. We got the earthquake activity in the Aegean Sea. I then issued a warning for Albania going into Bosnia. Fortunately, the earthquake struck. Unfortunately, I was wrong. So when I issued the warning, it struck down to the south instead of at the center. Down to the south, down in the Aegean Sea. But now it looks like we're back over to Italy. So it looks like Central Europe's out of the mix completely. I still need to figure out where the energy went in Central Europe. If I'm off by a few days and we get a new earthquake here at the central part of Europe, right where this little tiny arrow is, right at the center of the screen where there are no earthquakes, please forgive me. I'm canceling the warning now and I'm shifting over to the west based on the new earthquake activity going up across into Italy, where we have 3 sets of earthquakes overlapping in North Italy, where I'm going to issue the new warning between Turin and Milan at the South Swiss border for a new upper 4 to come in, maybe even as far high as a low 5. where all three sets of rings are overlapping there. Now, there's a plate boundary that comes right up into it. Longtime viewers already know about this. See Italy here? See the red line? It goes right up into and dead ends into North Italy. We're watching between where it dead ends and over to the west at Milan, right across the center of it. And we have a flow coming in. It's like a ramp that jumps up into Italy at that point. Do you see it? Again, it comes out of Greece and goes right up in dead ends into the Swiss Alps. The rest of the flow goes out over to the west. You can see which way it goes. It goes out to a T intersection, out over across past Gibraltar, and that's where all our earthquakes are. And guess what? They're the same size. Same size as what? Same size as all the others across the Pacific and in the United States. 5.2 to 5.3. Down to the point. So the flow, this traces, let's go back to the USGS map one more time. T intersection out here at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge out west of Europe. Our flow going out and reaching out to it. Now going back across this way, we're 5.2, 5.2, 5.2, 5.2. And going across this way, I would expect in the next 2 days, a new set of 5.2s over in South America. Let's go talk about Central and South America and wrap this update up. The longest update ever. So going back 2 days, guess what the size of the earthquakes were down in South America? Well, you can see it. I'm showing you everything 4.9 and greater. You see it goes up to 5.2. 5.2 to 5.3, just like the others across the planet over in Europe, just like the ones at the Mid-Atlantic, just like the ones over in Asia, just like the ones going across, every single one. We're looking at 4.9 and greater. So it's a perfect spread going across the whole planet of the same size energy. Think of it like this. A low-frequency wave of some kind emanating from down below here, hammering up like a bass drum, then comes up, spreads out and away, and drops off the same-sized earthquakes as the wave spreads. And the wave spreads just like a wave in a lake or in a standing wave tank, and we get same-sized earthquakes spaced out somewhat equally across this uneven mass of a wave tank. And it spreads out and tries to equalize across both sides of the whole planet. And in this case, it went out and across down to South America yesterday before it went across the other way out today, up towards Japan. Went across this way. Look at the arrows. Look which way they point. One arrow points right down in the middle of the area that moved. Then you spread out and down across, going out and away. See the spacing on the quakes? How it's almost perfect on this, where, like if this was a wave, the wave peak would be where each 5.2 and 5.3 is. We're looking at 4.9 and greater. Boom, 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 boom. What does that follow? That follows this. Going across the coast of South America, down and around, across the plate boundary for Antarctica. What does that mean? It means there's a wave that's traveling between the two plates in a day, and it's the same size as what's going across the rest of the planet. It's like one of my biggest discoveries, that there's a flow of the same size energy going around a whole planet, dropping off the quakes along the way. This is the force that causes the earthquakes. So that's why the United States got struck by a 5.3. Now, if I saw 7s going around the whole planet right now, I'd be on high alert for a new 7 on the West Coast. So go look into that earthquake prediction channel over on Twitter, and what you're going to find is that it looks like it's automated. If it's not automated, it's a person sitting there cranking that shit out all day long. I haven't done an update in a week. Turns out, never mind. I'm not going off on anybody. If they put out their methodology, I'd be happy to test it. Again, anybody. Hey, I had this idea. Just tell me if you think this is a good idea. We should have an earthquake forecasting summit at some point for all of us controversial jerks out there, like me and, not a jerk, but I'm the jerk, but the other guys like SO and Frank Hoogerbeats and what was that? Holmquist, the guy they recommended in the Vice article as they're ripping me apart. That we would get all the earthquake forecasters who are known. We all hate each other, just extremely, So it'd be perfect for us all to get together and actually have the first earthquake forecasting summit. And just, there's got to be, I'd just be willing to bet that if you combined almost all of our methods, that you would get the perfect earthquake forecasting method. That if you incorporated SO's Earth spots with the storms and the solar and all that. And then you incorporated Hooger Beats with the solar and the planetary alignments. And then you incorporate in me with the standing waves and the halfway points and the deep earthquakes. And you incorporate in Holmquist, whatever he's doing. And you put it all together that there may be this master forecast method that incorporates in everyone's discoveries. Anyway. It might just be great to get everybody together in a big brawl in a cage match, and they put a bunch of chairs, and it'll be like Junkyard Dog versus Rowdy Roddy Piper, and it'll be perfect. That'd be great. I'd like to meet all those guys. I bet they're all nice in real life. Again, this online crap turns us all into hard asses, right, guys? If you didn't start out one, man, by the time you're done, boot camp times 1,000, man, online. 11:38 p.m. Now that we've lightened up the load here a little bit, do you have an earthquake plan? This is something that I think all the channels, the earthquake, earthquake prediction channel, the people who are talking about it on YouTube and everything, they would all agree with what I'm getting ready to say. I don't think any one of them would disagree with what I'm about to tell you. That it's a good idea to have an earthquake plan and a preparedness kit of some kind. I'm not selling any of that stuff. You can gather most of the stuff you need yourself. So an earthquake kit could also be an emergency kit that would double for storms and everything else. It's seasonal specific. You need to have a change of clothes and a set of shoes, most likely in the bag, ready to go. Also, food and water, self-defense might be required in certain areas, especially if people are desperate. The food and water, with the water, you might want a pump or some kind. They're expensive, but carrying around 7 pounds per gallon of water, good luck. With the food, you can have prepackaged, the lightweight granolas. I would recommend high energy, high protein for the first few days of a disaster. You're not going to be cooking steaks, and meals ready to eat are going to be pretty nasty if you eat them for a long time. So you might want to have a various source of food. And then the other things you'll have, again, everybody's bug out bag is going to be different. If you're a bachelor, it might be different than if you have a family. Don't forget your pets, your loved ones who might be dependent on you, your neighbors even. And I would even recommend having some extra supplies laying around just in case somebody comes stepping and you can toss them some stuff and they go walking. Be easier than trying to fight them. If you could toss them a bug out bag full of food or whatever and give them all you got kind of thing, and you've got an extra bug out bag ready to go for them. Might come in handy. Might also come in handy if you run out of the supplies in one bag. So have extras. Think about medicines also. Also think about bartering. Things that you can barter with in a disaster could come in handy. Everything from cigarettes. If you're a hippie, you know what I'm talking about. You might need so whatever you need to have in that emergency kit. Everything from medicines to IDs and personal supplies. Do it. None of those channels that I mentioned or didn't mention would disagree. Even the government would probably agree with me on this. Actually, they might not want you to prepare. They'll tell you to come to them. Come to the gymnasium. Come get locked down with the rest of the normies who forgot all their crap and who are panicking and want answers but can't get them. Yeah, great idea. Oh, yeah. Prepare. Don't wait on the government, whatever you do. You saw Katrina. You saw what happened after a 3-day hurricane. I'm not going off on the government. I'm just saying they can't handle anything. When really big disasters happen, you got to be self-sufficient. All right. Anyway, not trying to lecture you. I'm saving this as a video, and we will go upload this over to YouTube so we can watch it back. One more time. Let's just go check and see if anything's hit since I started the update. I don't see anything too big that's hit. 4s have struck, a few 4s. 4.9 struck out at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and we're moving with 2.0 level activity in the valley now, but nothing huge has hit since starting this update. Sometimes they do hit, guys. If anything big does strike, I am around. I have been around for the last, God knows how long. I got shut off a month ago. My wife is in here with me as a witness in case anybody wants to debate. Right, babe?
Right.
And I don't have her queued up on a button either, guys. She's for real, okay? Anyway, about a month and a half ago, supposedly the line to my house got cut. But not to my house, to our whole community. Out of the highway. They told us that. was off for 2 days. Then it came back on at 1 meg. 1 meg, guys. 1 meg. Well, gave them a few days. Figure I'd call and find out what the deal was. They told me they weren't aware there was a problem. Had to send out a technician. But they couldn't send him out to December 26th, day after Christmas. This is in start of December, guys. Or end of November. I'm like, I'll give them it's not a problem with my router. I mean, they told us the line was cut out at the highway. So I figured that maybe they had to put a new line in or something, give them a couple of weeks. Well, off again, and again, and again, and again, and again. We've now been off over 350 times in the last month. I switched internet service providers, or I'm switching internet service providers again. Starlink is now shut off. Starlink, same thing. They shut us off on Starlink, shut us off on DSL, shut us off on cable. The point of me telling you this is I don't have a live stream running anymore. And uploading is really a problem. And communicating is a problem. No internet is a problem. And it's not my computer or my router, because it's 3 or 4 different internet service providers. Now, I have my theories as to who could shut off 4 different internet service providers, including Starlink. I would think it would be the government. If it's a person, it's the most powerful hacker in the universe. But with my wife as my witness here, I want you guys all to understand the amount of shutdown that I'm going through right now is the most that I've ever experienced. More than HARP rings and weather modification. I'm literally sitting here with internet off for a month and a half now, with no answers or ETAs to a fix or why. Now, this has been 6 years of being shut down when I'm making phenomenal discoveries and doing big things. Only when those things are happening. If I take time off or whatever, months on end, does not happen. Don't get shut down. I'm going to be getting answers as to where the shutdown is coming from. If it comes from the government, I will tell you and show you as much as I can find out. But we've now decided to take appropriate steps after all these years to get answers. If it leads to the government, there's nothing I can do about it. If it leads to private groups or individuals, there is something certainly that we can do about it. And I would hope that many of you would maybe help me get answers along the way. Anyway, just giving you an update. I'm not live anymore because I can't stream at all, period. No mobile. We don't have a mobile connection out here, by the way. We live in the middle of the woods. We literally do not have a mobile connection. So mobile's out of the question, like cell phone, mobile data, 4G, 5G, not working, not going to work. Starlink has been shut off. They literally shut it off and then disabled the cell too. They put a cell over my location, in case you didn't know. Starlink made a cell just for New Melle, Missouri. But Starlink disabled, turned us off, wouldn't let us stream. Crazy. Cable shut off. You guys, again, know that story. And DSL, well, not an option. So all this complaining about the internet to tell all my longtime subscribers, the several thousand of you who are paying for a subscription over on Twitch, someday I will be back. But it probably will take some serious workarounds and me moving to do that. Till then, we get videos on YouTube and anything else I can manage to squeeze out live if I can get a connection. Much love, guys. This is the face of censorship. This is what happens when somebody makes a big discovery, gets in trouble in regards to the government. And when I say the government, I mean agencies. It's like the USGS, Department of Interior, actually, who I pissed off. Oil companies are involved, but they're tacit and secondary. It's a big-time problem with the USGS and Department of Interior. Once it gets to that level, though, you can expect your shutdowns to get pretty serious, I would expect. Much love, everyone. Happy New Year to everyone. 2023, how long is this update? 1 hour, 9 minutes long. Amazing. Amazing. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been a while. It's been over a week since my last update. Here's to it being another few days until the next large earthquake. Peace out.